So, good morning, everyone. In this beautiful, beautiful day of Hanukkah, first day of Hanukkah, to be able to share a special message, a message of light, a message of personal victory. Let me start with a story. This happened many years ago when a young Chabad rabbi ended up in one of the cities of Germany. He had come there 4 months before. They were commemorating Kristallnacht. They called it Kristallnacht, even though the name sounds beautiful, the night of crystals, but really it was a destruction, and the most horrible things that could happen happened. The destruction of synagogues, etc. They made an evening, and this evening they invited people, German Jews, to commemorate Kristallnacht. The assistant to the chancellor came to speak. The young rabbi, which had just moved into town 4 months before, Chabad, was invited as well to the event. And he starts. The assistant to the chancellor says, "We love all of you. What happened is unacceptable. We would never, ever, ever, ever accept that this should happen again. We are one nation. And we are on your side." So you would think after all this, everything is fine, everything is good. But then they invited the rabbi to speak. The young rabbi, just married, just arrived to the city 4 months before, as we said before, gets up and he says, "Dear friends, dear brothers and sisters, I want you to know that you should not believe one word that you just heard. No, they do not love us. Yes, there's still anti-Semitism in Germany. And the proof is that I wanted to place a menorah in the center of the city, and they're not letting me put up my menorah." I have such admiration for this young man. The chutzpah, to be able to stand up and say it the way it is. Well, what happened? What happened, my friends. 3 days later, he gets a letter from the mayor of that city. "Where do you want your menorah? How big do you want it? We will pay for it." That's the victory of Chanuka. When we speak about Chanuka, we say, as we all know, that the miracle lasted for 8 days. Did the miracle really last for 8 days, my friends? No. The miracle has lasted for the last 2,000 years. And the proof of the matter is, the proof in the pudding, is that at all of the holidays that we celebrate, the holiday that's the most observed by Jews is none other than the holiday of Chanuka. The holiday of Chanuka. What is it? Why do we celebrate it? What is so special about it that makes it the central holiday, the holiday that lights up the souls of the Jews, lights up the world? Well, they were the Greeks. The Greeks at the time of the temple, the second temple, they wanted to get the Jews to live their life as Greeks. Why? Well, they felt that this whole God thing, this whole metaphysic, above nature, it's not for us. We are logical people. We are people that understand. We have statues for everything. Beauty is worshipped. There's a statue that represents this type of God and that type of God. Well, gods that you create are gods you can understand. And when you want your life to be justified or your wrongdoings to be justified, you create a God that will do wrong. To understand that there's a God which is above nature, that created this world that we cannot understand, that the Greeks didn't want to hear from it. And therefore, they said, "Kitvu lachem al keren ashor, she'en lachem helek be'elokei Israel." Write on the horn of the ox, we do not have a part in the God of Israel. Why the horn of the ox? Well, some say the reason why the Greeks wanted to put, the Jews to put these words on the horn of the ox had to do with the fact that the ox used to be the method of transportation. And therefore, wherever a Jew would go with his ox, it would be written on his horn, "I don't have a part in the God of Israel." Interestingly enough, if you look around you, you will see many, many, many cars that have a menorah screaming out, "We have a part in the God of Israel," to counteract this decree of the Greeks. Another interpretation is, another reason for this is that at the time, the archaeologists found that the baby bottle already existed at the time of the Second Temple. How do you have a baby bottle at the time of the Second Temple? Well, very simple. They used to take a horn of an ox, pierce a hole so it would look like a little shofar, and the hole was very small, and they would put the milk inside, and like this, the baby would be able to suck out the milk. Incredible idea, right? Well, the idea was that the little babies already at the young age, when they're drinking the milk, they should see you don't have a part in the God of Israel. You are just a logical human. You have nothing to do with what's above, surhuman. That was the message of the Greeks. And that's why, for those of you who know the Hebrew alphabet, Greece, in Hebrew, is the word Yavan. What is Yavan? We have the letter Yud. Then if you draw the letter Yud, then you draw it a little more down, you have the letter Vav. And then you have the letter Nun. If you go a little lower, you have the letter Nun. Why? Because the whole concept of Greece, the whole concept of that Greco-Syrian mentality has to do with immersing oneself more in the bodily desires, in the materialists, get more excited, not have any conscience whatsoever. Be happy, party, because tomorrow we'll die. The life of a Jew is a completely different life. And therefore, when things happen in a physical world, in a physical reality, they affect the spiritual reality. And that's how you have the holiday of Hanukkah. Our sages teach us in the Talmud of Shabbat, page 21, 22, and they say over there that the Greeks impurified all the oils of the temple. And they were not able to light the menorah. Well, actually, they were allowed to light the menorah. Because according to halakha, according to Jewish law, if everything is impure, they defiled the whole temple. If the whole temple is impure, everybody's impure. You're able to do the service of lighting the menorah even with impure oil. But the Jewish people were not satisfied with that. They did not want to serve God in a state of impurity, even though they were allowed to. They looked and they searched for oil which was not touched and defiled by the Greeks. And finally, they found one jar of oil, Bechotamo shel Kohen Gadol, with the stamp of the high priest. They used that one jar of oil, not expecting anything, not expecting any miracles. But they just decided that if we're going to light, let's light in purity. Let's light with quality, because quality supersedes quantity. They did it. They lit the menorah, and the miracle happens. What was supposed to light for one day lit for 8 days. Somebody sent me a nice joke. They said, imagine for a second that your phone is about to die. It has enough to last for 1 hour and last for 8 days. You would say, wow, that's a miracle, right? Then you'd understand. Of course. When you light the menorah, when you find that jar of pure olive oil with the stamp of the Kohen Gadol, we're talking about a victory which is greater than the victory that there was in the war. The Maccabees, the Kohanim, that fought the great Greek army. The Kohanim were few, but they won against a great army. Nevertheless, we don't celebrate the war of the Jews. We celebrate the fact that the oil, they found a jar of oil, they looked for the jar of oil, and that the oil lit for a longer time. What is the message? Well, imagine for a second you're in a subway in Paris. I was just in Paris. You're in a subway in Paris, and a group of thugs start beating you up. And you are very strong and mighty. Baruch Hashem, you're able to take these thugs and win the fight. Meanwhile, when you leave the subway, the next day you realize, I lost my ID. Let me go back to the subway. And over there you find your ID. And you celebrate the fact that you found your ID. What is a greater miracle? You fighting against the thugs and winning, or you finding your ID? Fighting against the thugs is maybe a question of strength. You finding your ID when it could have been lost is somewhat something which is above nature. When a Jew looks, when he is living amongst Greeks in a society, in a civilization that is the polar opposite of what spirituality and godliness is, in a place where some governments want to take off the words "in God we trust" from the American dollar, where all the values are upside down and you cannot trust anyone, to keep your identity at this time is the greatest miracle. Let's examine for a second what happens in Hanukkah. Hanukkah, there's a very special mitzvah to light the Hanukiah, and to light it at a specific time, in a specific place, in a specific way. Why? Not only that, there's a specific mitzvah of pirsumei nisa, to spread the miracle. It's a mitzvah that you don't find anywhere else in all the mitzvot. Well, it's very simple. You take a menorah on the night of Hanukkah. And the mitzvah is that when you come into the door, when you come through the door, at home, on your right side, you have the mezuzah. You should place the menorah on the left side. On the left side, it should be, that's number one. Number two, the menorah needs to face the outside. Sometimes that's not possible, to just leave it on the left side. The menorah, contrary to the menorah that was in the temple, has to be lit after night falls. The menorah that was in the temple was lit an hour and 15 minutes approximately before night falls. Here, the menorah has to be lit after night falls. Besides that, the menorah that we have has 8 branches. The menorah of the Bet HaMikdash only had 7 branches. Why? And besides that, how do we light the menorah? I should have brought the menorah. I didn't, but it's okay. It's not too late. So the way to do it, to light the menorah, is that every night, let's say you have the shamash. The shamash is on one side. Right here, you have the candle from which you're going to light. We go from right to left. Every night, you add a candle going from right to left till you have 8 candles. Which candle do you light first? Let's say we're on the 3rd night of Hanukkah. Let's say the 4th night of Hanukkah. And all the lights are supposed to be at the same level, not like my fingers. And you're going, this is the 1st night, 2nd night, 3rd night, 4th night. And this is the shamash. You first light the candle, which is on the left. And you add. And then the next night, you add another candle on the left. We see here, there's something special about the left side and Chanuka. Let's explain. There are 2 ways of expression, of godly expressions, of human expressions. There is the right hand, which represents revelation, which represents giving, which represents revealing. And you have the left side. The left side represents concealment, represents severity. So now, what happens? What happens is that God tells us that there are positive commandments and negative commandments. The positive commandments, the root of all positive commandments is the revelation of God in the world. God tells us, light the Shabbat candles, for example, or put on tefillin, and tells us very specifically what we need to do. That's a positive commandment. Comes from the right side. The left side, the concept of severity, rigor, is the concept of do not kill, do not steal. What is stronger, do you say? When God tells you to do, or when God tells you not to do? I'm going to speak about different things, and we're going to bring it together. So keep that in mind. What is higher, light or darkness? Light, you might say, is higher because you see the light. Well, actually, our sages teach us in Kabbalah and Chassidut that what you see, what is revealed, is already limited. What you don't see is above limitations. It represents the infinite. And therefore, darkness is the potential of light. Another example. When you have a feeling in your heart or a thought in your mind, what is more powerful? When you express your feeling, or when you express your mind, or when it's still in your mind or in your heart? At the level of the heart, at the level of the mind, the feeling is infinite. And the proof is that it could be expressed in so many different ways. Once it's expressed, it's already limited to words, to a situation, to the person listening, to the person that you are sharing with. So we see here the difference between the right and the left, between light and darkness, between do and do not do, between concealed and revealed, is that the concealment is a much higher, much more potent, much more powerful than the light. because the light is already revealed. The potential that's in the darkness is much greater. It's a level of light that you cannot grasp. That level of light. For example, when you say do this, you are limiting exactly what to do. When you say do not do this, the do not is infinite. When do I accomplish the commandment of not to? It never ends, because do not is not limited to a specific parameter. On the night of Hanukkah, we light the menorah and we put our menorah on the left side. Why? Because in the left side is where the most darkness is. We put it not inside the house. In Israel, for example, I remember when I was a teen, I was 16 years old. I was studying in the south of Israel. And outside the house, they would have this menorah that was a straight menorah with oil in a glass box outside the house. Why? Because the difference between the inside and the outside is just like the difference between the right and the left. The right represents revelation, represents kindness, represents depth inside the house. Outside is the darkness. You have all this confusion outside in the world. So in space, you put it on the left side, not where the mezuzah is, but the opposite of the mezuzah. In the space, you put it outside the house. So it should face outside the house, where the most darkness is. And when do you light it? You don't light it when there is light. You light it when there's darkness, which means in time, the left side of time, the right side of time is daytime. The left side of time is darkness. You have to light up the darkness. Not only that, when you're going to light the menorah, you're going to go from right to left in the way the candles are put, and you're going to light the left first, the new candle. Why? Because on Chanuka, not like in the Bet HaMikdash, the Bet HaMikdash represents, so to say, the order of the world. There are 7 days, 6 days of creation, the 7-day Shabbat, 7 candles. This is the normal order of things. 8 candles represents what's above nature. On Hanukkah, we have a very special power. Listen carefully. Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the high priest, when he lit the menorah, it says, Vaya'as ken Aharon, and so did Aharon. What does that mean? God commanded him to light the menorah. And Rashi explains, what do you mean, so did Aharon? Melamed shivcho shel Aharon shelo shina. To teach you the praise of Aharon. Aharon did not change. He didn't change what? Well, he didn't change. The simple explanation is he didn't change what he was ordered to do. God told him to light the menorah. He lit the menorah. Bravo. Come on. Aaron HaKohen. Would I have a doubt for 1 second that Aaron, the brother of Moshe Rabbeinu, the high priest that represents the Jewish people, the only one that's allowed to go in the Kodesh HaKodashim, in the Holy of Holies, on the holiest day, is going to change what God told him in his commandment? To understand this deeper, we need to go into Kabbalah. The Ari HaKadosh, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, explains what happened. He says at the beginning of creation, if you look at the whole creation, whenever God creates something, he says, may there be this, Vaya'asken, and so it was. May there be that, and so it was. Except in one instance. And that's the instance of the creation of light. Vayomer Elokim, and God said, Yehi or, may there be light. It doesn't say, and so it was. It says, Vayhi or, and there was light. those who know what the Talmud say, the word vayhi, and there was, is a negative connotation. When it says v'haya, which means that there was, it's a positive connotation.
Rabbi Amar did a great job putting you to sleep.
What happened with the light is that the original light that was intended, that God wanted to bring to the world, what we call the Or HaGanuz, the great infinite light of Hashem, did not come down to the world. God was worried. God was worried that the evil people would benefit of this light, would use this light for their own benefit. And therefore, the first intended light was changed to a light which is a nice light, but is not the real hidden light of Hashem. For who did a God hide this light? And where did he hide this light? So our sages teach us that he gave this light to the tzaddikim, to the righteous. And with this light, the tzaddikim are able to see from one end of the world to the other. They're able to transform the world. And he hid the light in the study of Torah and Torah. When Aaron HaKohen lit the menorah, it says, Vaya'asken Aaron. And Aaron did so. Melamed shivcho shel Aaron shelo shina, to teach you that Aaron did not change. What did he not change? He didn't change the original light that God intended at the beginning of creation. And the way he brought it down is exactly the way it was above. Meaning that the light of the menorah is the light that God had intended originally when he created the world. It's the infinite light of God. And therefore, when you and I, all of us, are lighting the menorah, we are bringing down that infinite light. We have now a power to transform the darkness and reveal the light in the darkness. And therefore, we go to the left side on the time which is the darkest, outside, in order to light it up and transform the whole world. Imagine what's happening. We are only the first day of Hanukkah. Where in the world did they start lighting the menorah? When for us here in Florida, it was Sunday night that we started lighting the menorah. On Motzei Shabbat, on Saturday night, there's a place a little far away from here called Tasmania in New Zealand. And over there, they started lighting the first candle of Hanukkah. When they started lighting the first June, Tasmania started lighting the first night of Hanukkah. He started a cycle of many Jews, boys, children, everywhere in the world, families gathering together. A human cycle of 24 hours, which we took part of last night, where people are lighting the first candle. And we will not have time for the first candle in the world in Alaska to extinguish itself, that already in Tasmania, they'll be lighting the second candle, which they did already. And like this, the world is going to go in a crescendo of light, going up and up from the second to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth, to the sixth, to the seventh, to the eighth, till infinity. The lesson of Chanuka is that in order to fight darkness, you don't need to fight darkness. The glory of the Jewish people is not the fact that few are able to fight the many. It's the fact that we are able to shine our light. And when we only make a little effort to shine that light, at that moment, the darkness dispels itself by itself. There are two opinions on how to light the menorah. The opinion of Bet Shammai and the opinion of Bet Hillel. Bet Shammai says on the first night you light 8 candles. Why? Well, in the jar of oil, what happened? There was a potential to light 8 nights. Okay. On the second night, how much potential did it have to light? Another 7 nights. So you go down. Bet Hillel says no. The way to be able to grow, the way to be able to connect yourself to God is not in a way that the revelation comes from Hashem, where in one shot there's such a revelation that darkness is always completely pushed away. The whole purpose, the whole power of a Jew is when he makes that effort, one step at a time, one light at a time. And he continues to grow from one level to another level, to another level, to another level, till he comes to infinity. And then he realizes it's a never-ending growing process, personal growth process, where you reveal your light. And at that moment, there's no place for darkness. At that moment, because you made the effort, not because there was a revelation of above, you are transformed. You are already putting yourself in a process where you get used to getting out of your comfort zone. You're never comfortable being comfortable. This is the true message of Hanukkah. The Greeks wanted to put us in a box. They wanted to make statues out of us, super intelligent beings. The Jewish people are very intellectual. They're geniuses. But please get God out of the picture. You know, one of my favorite stories of the Midrash is the story of Avraham Avinu. Abraham, our forefather, when he was looking for God, his father told him, I'm going on a business trip. His father used to be an idol worshiper and used to sell idols. I think he owned idol.com or something like that. So his father told him, keep the store. Take care of the store while I'm gone. Avraham Avinu broke all of his father's idols and left the big idol with a stick in its hand. And when the father came, he told him, what's happening? He says, no, they didn't want to eat. So the big idol broke them to pieces. And his father looked at him and says, what are you talking about? They don't see, they don't speak, they don't walk. So he said, why do you worship something that doesn't see, speak, or walk? But I think there's a much deeper message. The message of Avraham Avinu is the message of Chanuka. The Greeks, if you look in the Greek history, there is what we call the golden measure. I think it has another word in English, 1.18 and so on and so forth. Well, yeah, there's a certain proportion between the eye and the mouth, between the head and the torso, between the torso and the legs, to make this perfect being. And they had these statues. Statue is just like the word status. I'm static. I'm not moving. I'm not growing. Avraham Avinu says, no. If you are connected to God, you are always growing. I'm going to break the statues. You're going to have to break out of who you are to grow to the next person. Thankfully, in WhatsApp, the status is only for 24 hours. Even they figured out that you need to grow. Besides that, the Talmud of Baba Metzia says that even טובה את התלויה בצווארו של אברהם, כל המסתכל בה מתרפא. The Talmud says that he had a necklace. Avraham Avinu had a necklace. And he had a special stone hanging from this necklace. Whoever looked at that stone would be healed from his sickness. I think there's a deeper lesson here. When a Jew would look in the direction of Abraham, he would understand if this Jew, Abraham, where he came from, he was not satisfied. He broke his nature. He broke out of where he is. He got tested 10 times and he overcame the challenge to become Abraham, the father of the Jewish people, besides being the father of all nations. Then I can be healed. Sickness is when you feel yourself, when you feel your ego, when you feel everything you're doing, you're stuck, you're static, you can't move. The moment they looked at Abraham, they understood the way to be healed is to get to work, to shine your light. And that's why the miracle happened with the oil. Because the oil is something very special. The oil, the shemen zayit, the oil represents the level of chokhmah, of wisdom. Oil has two opposite qualities. On one hand, it rises to the top. On the other hand, when you put oil, it goes deep, deep inside and it spreads all over. Because a Jew's wisdom, a Jew's connection with God, the level of chokhmah is compared to oil. It's just there's something holy in the oil. And the Jewish people are compared to olives because when they're under pressure, they give their best. They're able to shine. A Jew will always rise to the top. But the thing is, even when he is at the lowest level, he still maintains the qualities of oil. He's able to be at the top, different from everyone, while being able to permeate and get involved and transform the world, the lower levels of the world. That is the message of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a time where every single one of us who has this jar of oil inside of us, this untouched, pure connection with God, this quintessential connection with God, can awaken it like this. But we have to take upon ourselves to light the candle, to grow from strength to strength, from level to level. And it all starts with Ner HaMitzvah v'Tora'o. King Solomon says that the mitzvah is compared to a candle. The Torah is a great light. When we take the time every day to study Torah, our minds are turned on to that level of wisdom, to that level of light, to that untouched, pure level of self, which has this infinite potential to shine. When we do a mitzvah, even though we don't feel like it, at this moment we draw the light of God upon us. And that's why Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon says, Shemen me'al roshcha al yechsar, you should always have oil on your head. And believe me, he didn't mean gel. Well, not in my case, for sure. Avraham and Shlomo HaMelech said, have oil on your head because the soul is the flame. The body is the wick. The only way you can shine your light at the best way is where you always have oil. You always have the wisdom of Torah accompany you. So, Bezrat Hashem, on this day of Hanukkah, you know a neighbor that doesn't have a Hanukiah. You know somebody that doesn't know about Hanukkah. Invite them at your house. Bring them a menorah. Light up the world. Make others shine. And what's beautiful with lighting a light is that however much you light, you still didn't lose your own light. You just brought more light in the world. So this week, this is the time for us to connect to our inner light, our quintessential light, the light of Chanuka, which is inside of every single one of us. And with complete purity, to do a mitzvah, one mitzvah at a time, to grow, to study, to learn, to unite with Hashem and with his wisdom. And from there, we'll be able to have the infinite light of Hashem shine with the coming and the revelation of Mashiach. Amen. God bless you all. Happy Hanukkah. Thank you for joining us this morning.